Hello and welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. This week, we kick off a couple of weeks of John Carpenter movies with John Carpenter's 1987 film, Prince of Darkness. This is episode 299. That is 299 in our mainline series of Castle of Horror reviews. Bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have seen it. So warning, spoilers ahead. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, writer of the Young Captain Nemo series. The new one, Quest for the Nautilus, is out. With me from Austin is Tony Salvaggio, tech director at Rooster Teeth, lead singer and bassist of the band Deserts of Mars, and lead guitarist of the band Rise from Fire. Say hello, Tony.
Howdy.
And howdy, also in Austin, writer of the long-running underground comic series Halloween Man, Mr. Drew Edwards. Say hello.
Everyone's favorite demonic murder hobo.
I love that. Demonic murder hobo is seriously something that Todd McFarlane should make into an action film. Although I hope that he comes with the half a 10 speed, the deadly half a 10 speed.
I have a note about that, but I'll come to it back to it later.
He can poke you with it. And finally, also in Denver, as always, you heard of their color commentary from attorney Julia Guzman of Guzman Immigration of Denver. Say hello, Julia.
Hello, Julia.
So we had last week. It was pointed out that I never pronounce your name the same way twice. Mm-hmm. Which is
we've
remarkable.
Gone over that.
Yes, I just I'm still amazed by it because I still cannot learn, and I apologize. So
maybe after we know each other for a little longer.
One day you'll grow into it, Jason.
Okay, I think she uses different ones from time to time as well. Isn't that right? Isn't that correct?
Don't you put this on me?
I have never heard her go.
Put this on me.
I have never heard her go. Well, this is my husband. Jason Henderson.
Henderson. No, it's Henderson.
Henderson, yes. Jason Henderson. Although, Julia, tit for tat, you might try this.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure he's going to be Jason Henderson. And if he tries to correct me, I'm going to pull out a book and show them. It's published. It is in print.
Good grief.
And Tony with an I was on that same cover. That's the hilarious thing. That cover of Clockworks, they managed to misspell both of our names. That's the hilarious thing.
Well, not just that, but this is errata, but we told them it was wrong. They told us they corrected it. They told us it wasn't right, that it wasn't wrong, and then wrote us back and were like, oh, yeah.
Turns out.
No, that's not how it was printed. Oh, yeah, it was. What can you do?
When you guys are super famous, that'll be a really rare, it'll be a really expensive book because it'll be the one
Sometimes
thing.
you can see an error coming like years away. You can be like, hey, guys, don't forget, when we get to this thing, everyone remember. And they all go, sure, yeah. And then, no. Okay. Prince of Darkness is a 1987 American supernatural horror film directed, written, and scored by John Carpenter. It stars the amazing Donald Pleasance, Victor Wham, Jameson Parker of, Simon & Simon, and Lisa Blount. The film is the second installment in what Carpenter calls his Apocalypse trilogy, which began with The Thing, which, by the way, we are going to be doing next week, and concludes with In the Mouth of Madness, which has one of the most famous lines in horror. This is not reality. Probably we should actually, even though we'll be a little bit out of order. Okay, let's get our opening thoughts. Let's go Drew, Julia, Tony, and then I'll go. Drew, we're here talking about Prince of Darkness. I don't think we've ever discussed it before. What are your opening thoughts?
I fucking love this movie. I could watch this movie 400 or 500 times and never get sick of it. It is one of my favorite John Carpenter movies. It's also one of my favorite sort of satanic panic horror films. I think it's one of the most unique in that kind of genre because of the way it approaches the idea of evil and God and the devil and everything. In fact, the only thing that I think takes it further is probably Clive Barker's Hellraiser. But as far as demonology horror movies, this is one of the most wild. It's got a great cast. It's got so many Carpenter regulars, the only thing they would have made, if you could have cut out the two leads and somehow put Kurt Russell and Jamie Lee Curtis in instead, I think would be like the ultimate John Carpenter movie in a lot of ways. I was joking about it, during the intros, but I do love seeing Alice Cooper as a demonic murder hobo. Like, it just makes me happy. It's a weird movie, but it's also a weird movie that kind of makes you think. And I don't know. I have a lot of admiration for this movie because it's both bizarre and thought provoking. And I know there's going to be some disagreement on that, and I'm prepared to weather that because
I'm excited about that.
Love Prince of Darkness.
That sounds fabulous. Okay, thank you. Love Prince of Darkness. Julia, did you love Prince of Darkness?
I cannot say enough good things about Prince of Darkness, and that's because I can't say any good things about Prince of Darkness.
Oh my gosh. That's even
kidding.
rougher than I thought it was.
No, I'm kidding. I can say like two good things about it, but mostly I can't. No, I just don't like this movie. It's way too gory and gross and disjointed and slow. And there's like a couple of things that I thought were kind of original and interesting. It turns out that the bike thing, which I thought was really original, is actually an Alice Cooper thing. Alice Cooper used that bike prop, the half bike that he impales the other guy with. He uses it in his show, in his stage shows. He used it in his stage shows before the movie. And it was his own personal prop that he brought to the movie. So apparently the things I liked about this film were from Alice Cooper, because I thought Alice Cooper did a great job and it was really interesting. But no, it's not. I'm not a fan. Sorry. People.
So I can't wait to get into the discussion.
Sorry, people, and Drew.
The stuff that Drew was saying.
You don't have to apologize.
Well, I think it'll make it a better conversation, honestly. Tony, that's a wide berth, so you can kind of go anywhere here.
I'm leaning towards Drew, but I think I'm firmly right in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't my favorite Carpenter by any stretch, and when I first saw it, I wasn't as thrilled. I saw it alone in one summer, hanging out at my grandparents' house. I had a VCR, and I would rent tons of movies all week. And the one weekend I saw this. But what it lacks in, I think it's weirdly paced is, I think, one of my biggest pet peeves. But as far as originality goes, and tying, the devil is liquid in a canister that also is on the other side in a side dimension that's also antimatter, and can affect you by projectile vomiting.
Yes.
And the way it takes over people, like, there's a lot of just really great, the sense of dread as the homeless people start to congregate, all the stuff between science and religion and how they intertwine and actually are part of the same thing. Like, there's a ton of great ideas and cool stuff, but for me, it doesn't quite gel. No pun intended, in the way that it does. Sounds like it does for Drew. Although I've come around each time I watch it, I'm a little bit more like, okay, yeah, that's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
But it's definitely not my favorite Carpenter. But it has like the bug parts are like very Clive Barker. I think it would make an excellent double feature with Exorcist 3. Because of the way that people approach the religion and the mythos, and how that all kind of feels that sense of dread throughout it. I think this would make a great pairing with that. But like I said, I'm firmly in the middle. There's some really great stuff. Also, it's people who make movies that are supposed to be set in the 80s.
Yeah.
This is another one where you look at the college.
Yes.
Including the guy's very 80s mustache.
Oh, yeah.
Oof. Whoa. But everybody, I don't understand why so many, I know maybe it's hard to find some thrift stores that have this stuff. But when people go, oh, this is the 80s, just watch a movie like this. It's all right there. Every bit of 80s fashion as it stands.
As it actually was. Yes.
Is right here in this movie.
Yeah.
You don't have to
pants.
You don't have to amp it up. It doesn't have to be the MTV version of the 80s or like a anime in the 80s where everybody had shoulder pads and everything, even though that was prevalent. Like, just watch a movie like Prince of Darkness and just dress your characters like that.
Yep.
It's not, I don't understand. And I had it, I've talked about this in the past. I've had movies that are supposed to be like, oh, this is 80s. This is so 80s. Like it's not super hard to get it right. And this is a movie that you just watch it, because it was just the time period. It's not like we're going to be super 80s about it. You just watch the college.
Yes.
And you can go, ooh, wow, look at all the pastel and denim.
Yeah.
Totally. And the shoulder pads.
Yeah.
Well, and like I say, in the pleated pants, those early scenes. Well, really, the whole thing when they're walking around, watching their clothes. That is super cool. Okay, my only thought, and two things. First, I love the sort of crazy, like high level concept, which is, what if the only people who can see the world clearly are theoretical physicists and philosophers, because and they are aligned against science because they doubt the physical world. That's a really interesting concept, and it plays through the whole thing. That's cool. And second, though, my question is, this is a question really for Drew. Drew, I've heard you say, "Hey, I'm not crazy about let's scare Jessica to death because it puts me to sleep," right? And I feel like this one is paced like that one. I didn't react as well to this one as I did to that one. And you reacted well to this one and not to that one. And I'm just like,
I mean, other than it having kind of an overlong credit sequence, I feel like I have no issues with the pacing with this because it's constantly throwing things at me to make me think about, like, so, not to like spend too much time on the sort of way this treats theology and science and everything, because I think I'll derail what you just asked me. But I often say that I feel like the world is both magical and mundane at the same time. And I feel like this movie kind of exemplifies that in some ways, in the way that science and mysticism are intertwined. And so this is constantly throwing stuff at me to make me think, whereas something like Let's Scare Jessica to Death is just a bunch of images. There's nothing to make me there's nothing that makes me think. This movie really keeps me on my toes. Like, I think.
Well, and it's not fair of me to compare the two because.
Well, it is kind of comparing apples and oranges because they do have different agendas. But
the reason I bring it up though is because you and I each had the same complaint about the other movie, which is that I felt this one. You felt like that one puts you to sleep, and I felt like this one put me to sleep. But maybe we should get to the part that puts me to sleep later because I want to work our way through this movie. And in fact, I don't feel that way for the first half. So let's start at the university. Like Tony was talking about, we're at a beautiful university in the 80s, which was filmed some at the University of Southern California, and some, I can't remember where, but some other large campus. I think it was actually a religious campus, but regardless, it's just a big old campus. And I liked these early scenes because what's going on is you have Professor Barack, who is a theoretical physicist. And he is convinced that the closer you look at the world, this is Victor Wong, by the way, but the closer you look at the world, the less substantial it becomes. Everything that we know becomes untrue at a subatomic level, and that's everything. That time moves forward. That people that you get older and not younger. So, right at the beginning, I am riveted by all of the things that he's saying. It is so exciting watching these young people listening to him sort of go on about how in his world he's coming to find that all the everyday geometry is all not true. Okay, great.
But it's also cool to see him, because this is a year or so, it's 87 as opposed to 86, and so watch him as Egg Shin in Big Trouble Little China.
Yes.
And watching him go from that to a professor, and there's enough similarities in his delivery.
Yeah.
But he's still proposing mystical things. They're just scientifically mystical things.
Yes.
Although I will say, I think Dennis Dunn, in my opinion, did a little bit better job in Big Trouble Little China than he does in this movie. And I'm not sure why, because he's a really good actor, but something about his performance in Big Trouble in Little China felt better to me.
Right. Sure, I'd completely forgotten
because he's
he-
really good. It's just
Yeah.
I don't know why it gels better. Whatever.
It's
his
not really
character.
a big role. I mean, but yeah, but Wong is amazing. So he's really great, and Wong has a friend or acquaintance or however it is. Anyway, Father, whatever,
An
Priest
old
Donald Pleasance.
debate sparring buddy.
Yeah.
basically.
very good.
He's just credited as priest.
Okay.
He doesn't
Well,
have a
Donald
name.
Pleasance comes back into Professor
Father
Brock's life,
Father Loomis.
Yeah, Father
Yes.
Loomis.
Father
exactly.
Loomis to work.
and he says, I want you to come down to creepy LA church and take a look at it because a priest that we know has recently died, and when we were getting into his stuff, we discovered that he spent his last years in seclusion, except for he went down to babysit this weird ass crypt, and so we want to understand this crypt and what's going on here. So and this is brilliant. So far, we are in like real thriller universe. It's almost like a James Bond setup. It's, hey, Father so and so just died. We discovered something weird. You got to come take a look at it, Professor Barack. Love it. This is and can somebody, and that takes us down to the crypt. So Drew, you're excited about this. Explain to me, when we go down to the crypt, what is down in the crypt?
There is a ancient glowing green vat that looks like it escaped from one of the Ninja Turtles movies and
Yes.
got set dressed by the best Hammer horror set dressers that didn't get to do a Hammer horror movie with a gazillion crosses and gothic candles around
And
it.
I want to know who was keeping those candles lit and refreshed, because candles can't just burn forever. Like, they burn out.
I'm sure it was the priest that was living there.
Yeah.
Maybe,
He
but we
goes in
never
there
see
to
him
eat
like
stuff.
going in there and replacing candles or whatever.
Well, I mean, he's on his deathbed when we
It's
see
a lot of
him.
work. That's what I'm
Right.
saying. They're still going. The whole movie, all the candles are
Well,
still lit.
don't you think? Okay, maybe they're lit by Satan.
Yeah.
Could be.
Satanic,
That's a good
Maybe.
theory.
Yeah.
But it was a cool looking room, and that is a cool looking green vat. Oh, whatever goop.
I kept calling it jarred Lucifer.
Yes. It is.
Candy
Which sounds like a good hot sauce, or perhaps something else.
Yeah, that would be a great name for hot sauce. Jarred Lucifer.
It's a big thermos of green goop that apparently has been here on Earth since Earth was mostly primordial ooze, and we're gonna find, and basically there are two things that are being guarded in this place. There's the thermos of Satan, and there is a book, and that book has been written and rewritten and transcribed for thousands of years. And so the plot so far, and this is actually just great. I mean, so far I'm totally riveted. Is okay, we got the weird book, and so Professor Birack, please bring a bunch of grad students to the church and spend some time translating the book, and also setting up gear to see if the Satan thermos is doing anything. And
this is what I mean when I say it's slow, because that takes forever. I just felt like I wish they would have gotten to about an hour into the film is when the action starts, because up until that point they really are just trying to decipher the thing and walking around and looking at stuff.
I love all that business
I
of
couldn't
them,
stand
though.
it.
Like I like that stuff. Like I would be sad if it was not in it.
I actually agree with Drew on this one. I love that stuff too. All the the lady who's like translating.
Well, I would have liked it if we would have spent some time getting to know the actual characters and like knowing with their relationships and stuff. But I just feel like they didn't do enough with it.
And we
But
should mention, by the way,
my thing.
there are a couple of characters we've gotten to know pretty well. Jameson Parker of Simon and Simon, and Lisa Blount, who plays Catherine, have started dating. And then there's a bunch of other, and all the other scientists are together. And I think I love this thing about where there's 20 scientists just wandering around.
Yeah, and that's the other thing, is like too many people to get to know who they are. I mean, I get that you need to be able to kill a bunch and still have a bunch left, but it just felt a little crowded to me.
Okay, fair enough. The other thing that's going on before we move on
Also,
is that go ahead.
But also the whole dating thing is hilarious to me because I want to know the person. I mean, I guess maybe it would work, but I want to know at what point going, yeah, I'm sexist,
Right.
works. And then, did I say something wrong? I meant something else.
No, that guy
And,
is so
I mean-
skeevy. I mean,
I
there's like,
know.
well, there was a couple of them, but there was
Is he skeezy or is it just the mustache?
That doesn't help.
The mustache just
Yeah,
helps.
let's
for
talk
the,
for a moment
definitely
about the
helps
gender
for the image,
relationships in this.
absolutely. But also just the fact that they're like, okay, there was two things. There was the girl who is, I think her name is that Catherine? I guess it's Catherine that's married or something like that, right? They're like kind of.
Oh no,
like looking at her.
the blonde one that is, who ends up becoming the vessel.
No, I'm not talking about Susan. I'm talking about the one that they're hitting on. That they're like, oh, hey, baby. There's like two girls, and so the one that the guy's being skeezy about is, I think, maybe Catherine. Anyway, Susan is the one they keep forgetting who she is. That just cracked me up because they kept going, who? Like, Susan, blah, blah, blah. Have you seen Susan? Who? Blonde, glasses. And then that happens
redhead
glasses,
yes.
Redhead glasses. That happens several times, and it just made me laugh. But like after a while, I just kind of went, just like, who the hell is Susan? But anyway, these guys are not, winning any prizes for.
You had this observation where you said, I said, why is it that like the Asian actress, and now I can't, An Yen. I was like, why is her character so standoffish to everybody who comes up and talks to her, Lisa? And you said something like that it's hard for Lisa because she's surrounded by men who
definitely,
who don't know boundaries.
Yeah, they have no boundaries.
Even Dennis Dunn's character comes up and goes, "Hey, you pass as Asian."
Right?
You're like, what? And then he's like, "Yeah, I guess I overstepped the line." You think? Like he's just instantly a dick.
Gross.
Like he's a dick on like 3 different levels right off the bat.
But I mean, the universe of this movie, like Jameson Parker hitting on Catherine, hitting on Lisa Blount, she looks away in consternation when he says something about how I'm a little sexist. In other words, he asserts this sort of masculine superiority. She looks away with a sort of a hurt look, and then the lesson of the whole scene, which is fascinating to me, is that she's wrong. The lesson is that she needs to own up to men being superior. It is a crazy freaking bit of dialogue. It's nuts.
It's definitely of the time of the 80s, but also, it is true. And you'll see it all the time on everything where finally people are going, you know what? Maybe I don't like to be condescended and mansplained.
Right.
And this is still in academia because so many men are jerks and all this stuff. And you see this microcosm of that and how it plays out. But if you look at it also, a lot of these guys are not the most competent people in the movie.
Yeah, no, it's true.
I mean,
at least Lisa, by the way, is a kick-ass translator who is just working at a desk. You gotta love Lisa. Just
because she's doing her job. The
page after page.
She's far ahead of everybody else.
You're right.
Other than, Catherine is like doing theoretical physics into the computer.
Yes.
And Lisa's translating like nobody's business. The priest can't even touch her. And he's supposedly part of an order who's doing this.
I love
all the guys are like, hey, have you seen what's her face? So I love that you have really to take this because she's like, I'm trying to get work done, ass.
Right.
Seriously.
And that was Julia's point about these are men who, she has to live in a world where men don't respect boundaries. But
or just women.
But it is funny that everybody else is really, half the time just hanging out in the break room, eating donuts and bitching. And at the same time, people have a tendency to be falling asleep, and they are all having the same dream. They're having a dream that is, Julia, do you want to explain what the dream is?
Well, what I was going to say actually is something neat about how that effect was done, which is that they have the dream. The dream looks like this weird kind of staticky thing, and you have this voice saying, "Hey, we can't communicate with you when you're conscious, so we're having to come to you through dreams to tell you this thing." And there's this figure in the doorway. And it's just kind of an odd dream, and nobody ever mentions it. Nobody ever seems to be alarmed by it or anything. They just kind of wake up but eventually Donald Pleasance says, "Hey, everybody has this dream that's the Brotherhood of Sleep." And so, but the dream was done by, they actually shot the scene with video and then filmed it off of a television screen. So it would look, so that was kind of a neat effect.
It's very
But
cool.
yeah, so that was interesting.
And Drew, this is a good example, I think, of what you were saying about get a load of these ideas. Like this idea that hey, like where suddenly the scientists are talking to one another now that they're done just screwing around in the kitchen. The scientists, and they go, wow, somebody could be sending a signal towards the point in space-time where the Earth used to be, thereby sending a subatomic message back through time. That is a Geordie LaForge level of like gobbledygook theoretical whatever. It's cool.
There's this like some really great hard science fiction ideas kind of filtered through the gloss of a satanic horror movie, and I think that's why I find this incredibly fascinating. Like there's even a whole point where you have Donald Pleasance talking to Victor Wong in one of the offices, and he Victor Wong, Professor Barak says, suppose your religion was fundamentally correct and there is a universal intelligence, but every energy has to have an opposite energy. All matter has to have antimatter, and therefore there is God and anti-God. And when I the first time I saw this, I think I was like 13, and I was watching this on VHS at home, and that blew my fucking mind away.
Yeah, but see, to me, I grew up with the idea of an antichrist, so I was never really, that was just kind of like, okay, yeah.
But that's not the same. The framework is different because antichrist is like a traditional religious conceit. This is grounding it in something more scientific. And I that's what I find fascinating. This is essentially The Exorcist for atheists.
Yeah, it's truly science fiction.
Sure, gotcha.
Yeah, and I had forgotten, every time I have been away from this movie for a given time, I had forgotten the intermarriage of science and religion.
Yes.
And how also the relationship between Professor Barak and Donald Pleasance's priest really starts to, they've been debating and they're kind of adversaries, but it really comes to a head in how close they actually are.
Yes.
Because of this object. But also it's, there's the point where Donald Pleasance is freaking out and going, none of my superiors told me what this really was.
Yeah.
It is closer to science. And his whole foundation is fundamentally changed.
Yeah.
At some point. Because both of them are right and wrong in different areas. And when he finally comes to the realization, he's less prepared for it because his faith has been called into play, but not just his faith in how things work, but his faith in the structure of the order that he's in.
Yeah.
Because they know, and they've known about this for 2,000 years.
Yeah, this secret order that knows, that is so, that are onto this thing, that there, all that stuff we just talked about, that there is a super god who is the anti-god, and it's just as much his universe as the good gods, and that Christ came to Earth to warn us
as an alien.
An alien.
Christ is an alien with vision into this alternate, in other words, into the other dimensions. In other words, it's a super high-tech alien. Christ, the super high-tech alien, came to Earth to warn us. He was murdered for that knowledge. Now we're into some crazy, wonderful esoterica. I mean, this is great. That's just what a bunch of
that's
wonderful.
The thing. Like, I'm growing up in a small town, like I'm going to church every Sunday, but I'm the sort of kid that questions things. And this movie, like, both makes me question the stuff I'm learning, but also kind of affirms it at the same time. And that's wild and just nuts. And, I have to say, like, I feel like this movie has kind of, to a degree, affected the way I look at like theology and things like that, and the way I actually, it's like formed some of the philosophies that I have as a person to this day. So like
I can dig that. Yeah, sure.
I really think that there is a lot, this movie might not be your cup of tea. Like it might not be, you might not like the pacing. I can understand Julia thinking that it's too violent, because it certainly is, I would call, ghoulish.
And there's a lot of like gross things that I was not into.
Yeah. And I understand that, but it's not a dumb movie. Like there's too much going on, and it does ask you to think.
I love that. Yeah, go ahead, Johnny.
To your point, if I saw it on the weekend, I can almost guarantee you, if I remember correctly, that would be on Saturday, where I would have probably just gone to Catholic church with my grandfather. And coming home and watching this, and probably, I think that same summer I probably saw The Unholy, or all of that. I still, the pacing is really what I find the hardest about this movie. So that never was great for me, but I agree. And I went to both Baptist church and Catholic church when I was growing up, and saw a myriad of different views, and it was strange. But all of the bits, and also being really into science, I think the theory and the bits of the movie, to me, are better than the sum of its parts. But every time I watch it again, I'm like, oh man, this had some really just crazy out there stuff, and how everybody deals with it and comes together on exactly what's going on is fascinating. And it also kind of goes into some of the stuff I think about when I think of like Clive Barker's Weave World, and how that kind of works, or Great and Secret Show. Those books kind of have their own, and I mean, those are very Barker books. Those are some of the best.
I haven't read Weave World. What
you should. I mean, it's just the way that it weaves different religions and science and everything. But that Weave World and Great and Secret Show, if you haven't read them, I recommend. If you're like Barker, because
I totally
don't, then it's not going to change your mind at all. He's very Clive Barker books. But I think they're at kind of his height of just creativity and just throwing stuff out there.
So what I wanted to point out, there's all of this great, so everything you're talking about, true, so wonderful so far. And my actual problem with the pacing, we'll get to shortly, because it's really in the second half. But I'm fine with all of this stuff. And then there's yet another thing, which is also outside of this church. And by the way, this location is so rocking. I don't know. I can't understand why every time I go to LA, I have not ever actually gone to this church just to stand in front of it, because it's awesome.
Bring your hobo clothes.
I know, but that's the other thing. From the very beginning, when they get there, whatever is going on with the thermos of Satan, it has aroused the local hobo population as guardian.
Well, not hobo, homeless population. That's
all right. Fair enough.
These are demonic murder hobos.
Right.
That is a technical name.
Yeah. Okay. And it needs to be something like that, because otherwise there's all kinds of insensitivity that I don't even know how to count going on with this. But whatever. There are a bunch of shabbily dressed human beings out there who have been taken over by and they are sort of standing guard and looking threateningly at all of our clean-cut scientist grad students who are going to spend all night on a camping trip because their professor told them to. And by the way, again, what a cool setup. I mean, what a just cool setup. I'm loving all of that stuff. So it seems to me that maybe what happened was they wrote this whole thing and they were like, it's not enough action. We need to come up with something else. Well, what if there's murder hobos who are encircling the place, and then periodically when things are going slow, we murder somebody? Otherwise I don't know what the hell's going on with these guys.
I think it's the human equivalent of what's going on with the ants and the bugs.
Oh my gosh, bugs. I forgot about the bugs.
Yeah,
boy, there's a lot of ideas in this thing.
How can you forget about the bugs? The bugs are the most repulsive ever. I think that's why I really don't like this film, is because I can't stand bugs. And there's so many bugs in this film. There's all the ants. There's all the beetles or cockroaches or whatever the hell those are. There's maggots. There's worms. Everything.
That is fair, but it is a horror movie. So if the bugs freaked you out, they did do their job.
Yeah,
it's a bug horror. It's a creature feature, basically, and I'm not a fan. But
there's a bit where a guy gets devoured by beetles. I love that whole sequence.
And then it becomes a bunch of beetles in a suit.
Yes,
but
it is
gurgly.
great.
Beatles.
That is just great because he is eaten by the beetles like little gray goo.
Every time you say "eaten by the Beatles," I'm picturing John Paul and Ringo, and
going
that's just not right.
the zombie beetles.
I love that George gets excluded from that little.
Did I exclude
Yeah,
George?
you did.
No,
My bad.
he just didn't
Oh, I
mention him.
just
But
didn't
I
hear.
assume that if the Fab Four,
he didn't get possessed by Satan.
if our lads from Liverpool have become flesh eating zombies, I think that George would be among them. The question is, would Pete Best be among them? Would Brian Epstein also be a zombie or be a zombie? A zombie
Beetle
fighter?
Man
You know how
is
you-
in my
you know how you
heart and in my brain.
You know how you destroy zombie beetles?
I don't know.
You introduce Yoko.
I was,
my
I
God.
thought I was going there, but
Oh, I went there.
In my mind, there was somewhere to go with the Stones, but I think your Yoko choice is a good one, and I applaud you, sir. Okay, but anyway, there's murder hobos. There's bugs that
Murder Hobo starring Alice Cooper.
starring Alice Cooper, who we just talked about like 2 weeks ago with Monster Dog, which is around this same time.
So Jason, if you when you land that interview with Alice Cooper,
yes,
you need to also talk to him about this movie.
can't believe
Right.
Alice Cooper has not responded. I mean, I guess that's just.
But what's also interesting is when it starts, you have Donald Pleasance kind of dealing with. I mean, he's a priest, so he's supposed to be compassionate.
Yeah.
And then you realize that the homeless people are not quite what your regular homeless people are. And he
Right.
quickly realized that too, like, oh, this doesn't look right.
Right.
And then as they start to congregate, and then Alice Cooper kills the guy. The first victim is Alice Cooper's actually.
Yes.
With a bike that, as it was pointed out, was a prop that he used in his stage show.
Yes.
But and I think if I remember correctly, the guy is listening to the Alice Cooper song on his headphones.
Oh.
At some point, if I'm not mistaken.
It may well be. This is the guy he
But
stabbed.
you only hear it through the headphones, so.
The guy he stabs with the 10-speed is the scientist with glasses who is leaving for reasons I don't recall. But it is a creepy moment.
He is helping the microbiology professor. He is covering one of his classes.
Right. Yes.
Right.
So and so that's when that terrible things are afoot, because he goes off to go cover one of the classes, and the moment somebody leaves, that person gets murdered. So basically, there's nobody coming. Now we know nobody's going to come in or out, especially because soon afterwards, the murder hobos block the front entrance. So yes, this is all of that is groovy, and I actually really think that the place where it begins to fall down for me is really not the last 20 minutes, when it becomes about a final twist or turn in the plot that we haven't gotten to yet. But there's now a point that's about the half hour before the last half hour, when now the various forces in the building start killing people off one by one, and the pacing sort of lags. Now, the one killing I
Really?
love. Well, I just want to mention, we talked about it before, but the one where the guy had gone out and he gets taken over by bugs, and he talks to them through the window until he gets devoured completely by the bugs. That's a good bit. That's a totally good bit. But the rest of it, I don't even know how I would fix it, because obviously you got to move the plot
I don't think
forward.
it needs to be fixed.
Yeah.
When I watched it this time, there's a point, so there's the beginning part, and then it starts to ramp up, and then it really ramps up with people getting possessed, and it's passing back and forth, and Walter is trapped in a closet for most of the time, and then it starts and people are getting, there's the one woman who becomes pregnant with Satan's baby, even though she just bumped into something. And that all picks really far up. And then there's a weird drop in the way that you think of a third act happening. And where it usually goes really fast. And that, I think, is always where it feels longer to me. And again, I don't necessarily say it needs to get fixed, but that's where I usually feel like, oh, wait, we have a lot more of this movie than I remembered it from the last time.
Well, because the big plot point that's coming. So yes, for a while you've got the thing where basically the thermos has put goop on the ceiling, and the ceiling is able to send streams of ectoplasm into people's mouths and turn them into basically zombies who infect.
Well, they're possessed. It's not zombies. They're possessed. They're
possessed.
They have
sure.
full faculty, and they're trying to spread more Satan juice across the.
And their eyesight is fixed.
Yeah, but the possessed thing I think is important, because the thing that I always find fascinating when I'm watching this, these people, even sometimes they are laughing, all look like they are about to cry when they are possessed. And I find that more disturbing than I think anything else in this movie, because I just feel so bad for them.
Interesting.
No, really, go back and watch one of the things, particularly I don't know the actor's name, but the black guy that's playing the microbiology professor, he really sells it, because he's constantly veering between, looking like he's going to sob and these giggling fits. And they're all kind of doing that, but he's terrific.
And he's the only one who does the giggling fits. I think that's fine. I mean, yes.
But there's just this sort of kind of even though they're scary, there's just this sort of kind of patheticness about it. Because you can tell, especially with him, that internally there's some sort of tug of war going on between this demonic sludge and the person that this, that used to be.
He even tries to end it. He cuts himself in the throat.
That's right.
But because he's possessed, it won't even let him die and give him peace.
Right.
And that is
that how you read that? You read that as him trying to end it? I thought that the possession was causing him to injure the body.
No, I think
that makes sense.
That's how I've always read it too.
I mean, that's a bonus for the demon, whatever it's doing, but it's performative in the demon part, but I also think he's got just enough. I always read it, he has just enough of himself just trying to end it, but of course the demon kind of knows. He's like, look at this, and he continues. That's scary as hell.
I was bothered by the fact that it feels like this movie's a bunch of ideas just thrown into a pot together, but all kind of disjointed. So, for example, the fact that character giggles constantly is very unnerving, but he's the only one who does that. They all kind of act differently depending on who they are. Because I'm not saying they have to. I'm just saying that bugged me, because I just kind of felt like it just felt like too much stuff. Too much was thrown in there. It was just a very busy, cluttered film. And so I'm not saying that they all have to behave the same, but it would be nice for me, it would be nice if you could tell somebody who's possessed because suddenly they're behaving a certain way that's different from how they're behaving before, but they all behave completely differently. There's no commonality.
I think trying to spit demon space sludge down somebody's throat is enough of a commonality.
Yeah, well, maybe. But anyway, it was just too much for me. Too many different things.
Agree to disagree.
Sure. Well, no, definitely there's a disagreement. And I think that's okay. I think it's very possible that you could get very different things out of this movie. And as we've discussed, you can even feel differently from week to week. There are movies where I'll watch something the first time and it does nothing for me. But it may be that, maybe I'm tired, but then you watch it a couple weeks later and you go, I completely missed this. The first time I watched Hardware, I really didn't find it all that interesting. But then later I watched it and I was like, oh, this is it's like Kali, the goddess of destruction and stuff. And suddenly it was interesting. But so there's another plot turn here all of a sudden. And Drew, I think also you might actually just be giddily enthused about how much plot's going on, because there's an embarrassment of riches going on with the plot, because there's yet another plot now, which is that the character of Kelly, who is the blonde girl, the married one that the dude who got stabbed with the bicycle was like, well, how married is she? So the boundaries again. But the blonde girl Kelly goes to sleep and wakes up possessed by the Prince of Darkness, who wants to come into our universe. And so the final act, and I'm talking like 20 minutes or so, is a whole sort of battle with her, and that's great, because actually she's trying to usher in the Prince of Darkness through a full length mirror into another dimension.
She's trying to bring in anti-God.
Right. Yes. The Father, so called, the anti-God. Yes.
It's kind of like in Christianity there's the Father and the Son, there's God and Jesus. That's kind of how this relationship feels like. They are the same thing, but they are also separate.
Yes. Yeah, no, I love that. Okay, I can dig it. And it is a mystery. So she's anyway, so that's a whole bit. That's a whole segment where they have to grapple with her. They're attacking her with axes. They're trying to get to her. Jameson Parker and Catherine and Lisa Blount both attack her, and then in a very exciting moment. Actually, before we get to it, let me just mention when she's basically the way that she's trying to pull the Father in from the other dimension is they have a full-length mirror that, because of everything being right, has now become a dimensional portal, which she is slowly reaching her hand through. And you laughed, and I think it's because when they cut off her hand the first time, her hand tumbles into the other dimension.
And her arm just grows right back.
And she grows another arm. Great. Love it. Yeah, that is awesome. She finally manages to grab onto the arm of Super Satan, and he's starting to come through. And then Lisa Blount basically does a running tackle and tumbles with Kelly into the other dimension. So they're not able to bring the Father through, and then
because Donald Pleasance finally works up enough nerve to throw an axe, because I guess he gets over his religious crises in time. But
he says to throw the axe, and I think Parker throws the axe, right? I believe that's right. Anyway, whichever one of them throws the axe.
Donald Pleasance is the one that throws the axe.
Donald Pleasance. Okay.
Simon guy tries to stop him from throwing the axe.
Oh, I apologize. Then I'm very sorry about that. Anyway, but that destroys the portal, but it means that even though she essentially saved everybody, Lisa was the hero. Catherine was the hero of the whole story. She gets stuck on the other side, and so that sucks for her. And then,
although what's a good religio horror movie without a martyr?
Of course, right. Absolutely.
Well, and then she turns up in the vision. It turns out that she's the one in the dream vision. She's the figure.
Yeah. Somehow she is going to be the person who will be emerging, probably as a substantiation of the Father. I presume.
In the future of 1999.
In the future of 1999. I can't believe it that in 1987 they would think, how far ahead do we want to put this? I don't know. 13 years should be plenty. That blows me away that they just
Well, yeah. I mean, it's interesting. It's the turn of the century thing, plus the fact, it sounds cool.
Yeah.
And, I guess 12 years is enough.
Yeah.
Things escalate quickly, I guess.
Yeah. Yes. And that gets us to the end. You were going to say something, Drew.
Well, I just wanted to say, like you said, am I giddy with all the ideas going on right here?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I am. I love the whole business of them fighting her and lopping off the limbs and her growing another arm and reattaching a head. I love Donald Pleasance muddled in the closet saying his prayers and everything. I love everything that is going on, and I am not blind to some of the complaints that y'all have stated. I just don't care. I fucking love this movie.
No, I think that's a totally fair place to be, because I feel that way about a whole bunch of things that's objectively other people are just left cold by. I totally so just because I will argue, believe me, I completely understand, completely identify. Yeah. For me though, I feel like, well, I'm thinking about it first as a writer because I'm trying to wonder. I've had this complaint directed at me before. Like, there's too much going on here. You need to remove something, and I'm wondering, is that the case here? Is there too much going on and something needs to get removed? And Drew would say, no, I'm digging it all. So,
yeah. Well, I mean, maybe that's because my favorite writer is Grant Morrison, and his philosophy is more is always more.
More is more. Yeah, no, it is definitely an argument because just because less is more is like this really memorable statement doesn't make it automatically true.
I agree with Drew. I think there's a lot of just the way it presents the ideas and how much going on. Like I have no problem with that. But watching it again, I did feel the pacing things that make me not just constantly watch this.
Yeah.
We're still there, but holy cow, is it packed full of and I see all these other movies that I like or other pieces in horror that all kind of culminate, and they're not rich, like this is an original thing, but just like, oh, well, that scene is why I liked this story. Mm-hmm. And that part is why I like this like science meets religion thing and how those come together. And so all that in a blender to me really works. And, it is in a blender of Satan juice, I guess.
Yeah.
And there's some great effects too. Like all the stuff where they're reversing things onto the ceiling. And,
Oh, yeah. And the worms, because again, worms are being attracted to this big church, and the worms are crawling upwards. There was
and the sense of foreboding
yes.
of all of the the homeless people coming together.
Yes.
And then when they're blocking people's paths, and
let's talk about that
it's already depending on how you feel, when you're in a big city, you can try to help people, whatever. There's a homeless population. There's a mix of both kind of being a little bit unnerved, but also guilt, and how you deal with that, and how we deal with homelessness as a society. And so there is always a little bit of unease for most people. Even social workers whose job it is to help. Everybody has a different reason for being homeless, and some of it's mental, some of it's just stuff happens, societal things. But when this demonic entity has pulled them as his army,
yes,
to be his enforcers, to keep everybody there, that's unnerving. The fact that it's Alice Cooper and he's got this look and he plays it so well, and he's kind of the ringleader, but also obviously being controlled by this entity. All of that's fascinating, and it ends up with the real sense of, wow, things are really, really not right in the world.
What I find fascinating is that John Carpenter, this is one of a couple movies that use the motif of homeless people to do something with art. And so here, homeless people are ready to be possessed and exploited by a powerful evil. And that exploitation is threatening to the rest of the, clean cut, approved of, acceptable, people that we're following, because look how cloistered and specialized and privileged everybody in this movie is. They're all a bunch of they're all grad students at least. And they're all they're all rich. They're all wearing new clothes. They're all doing great. And they're all sort of faintly ironic and not even that resentful. That's how much time they have to kick around. That's how much luxury they live in, that they think it's vaguely funny that their professor is going to make them spend the weekend in a church. They don't have anything else to get to. And, and the homeless people are there and have none of that shit, and they're ready to be exploited. And then a year later, Carpenter is going to make They Live, which switches the point of view completely. And so, and Rowdy Piper joins the homeless group, and I actually don't understand how to put these two pieces of art together, but I find it fascinating that that Carpenter thinks this is an interesting canvas to paint.
John Carpenter is a badass.
Absolutely.
That's like
yeah.
And it is interesting. It is an interesting canvas to paint on. I just think it's really fascinating that here the homeless people are scary, but it's because they're being exploited. And there the homeless people are victims, and it's again because they're exploited.
Well, I mean, couldn't we just say that Satan is sort of the ultimate 1%er?
Yes, I like that. Yeah, yes. and compare that to like the way old pictures would have done, like in the 50s, in Oklahoma, Curly is quite poor, and because he's poor, he's threatening. Curly's not, at least as traditionally presented, Curly's not being exploited, and his exploitation makes him dangerous. Curly's just dangerous, essentially. And, or likewise, Cape Fear, guys from the wrong side of the tracks is dangerous. So I just find it fascinating that Carpenter is interested in showing homeless people, which is also quite unusual. But he always has something unusual to say about it. I don't know. I haven't put this together in my head, but there's something there. Gosh, what else are we missing? Is there anything else that we should bring up before we get to final thoughts?
Well, I think I guess just coming from me, I've already talked about my own relationship with the theology that's in this movie. Like, I guess I am kind of curious, like, because I'm presuming most of us were raised pretty traditionally Christian. Like, does this ruffle anybody's feathers the way this is presented?
Wow, thank you for asking that.
So,
I mean, no,
for me
personally, no, but it's fascinating. Like, would it in '87? How would it play? Go ahead, Tony. You were going to say something.
Well, I don't want to. I mean, Julia, do you have any? I don't want to.
Well, I mean, so the way I was raised, of course, yeah, this would go against that because I was raised very Catholic. But my personal beliefs are that religion and science are not mutually exclusive. That in fact, a lot of the things that we talk about in religion fit very nicely with science, and a lot of what's not explained by science yet is what we use religion to explain. So that part actually I like. I mean, I thought that was neat. But sure, of course, if you're a hardcore Catholic, this is going to be there's going to be some stuff in here that you're going to be like, oh gosh, I don't like that. But I mean, of course, Catholics are believers in Satan, and at least in some form. So I think that the idea that like say the Antichrist reigns is not inconsistent. But I think that was that felt really organic for me.
I thought it was interesting. I think I remembered more this time. I really paid attention to how all fits together. But again, growing up the way I did, where half my time was spent in a Southern Baptist church, very, very Southern Baptist church, where at one point one of the preachers, had all those comics about how dinosaurs were put there to test our faith and all of that
right.
really anti-science, which I have my own beliefs. I often don't talk about my spirituality. I think for me, it's a very personal thing. If I'm discussing it with friends and we're all talking, but I don't talk about it online. I don't like to argue about it. I think we all have we all come from different places and we can discuss it, but I don't like being a dick about it. And I really, a lot of very evangelical doctrines kind of ruffle my feathers more than this. But as I saw this, I was also coming into a thing where I got to see the hypocrisy between Catholicism and Baptist church, and how I had Baptist friends, for example, who basically told me that my grandfather, very conservative and didn't agree with him all the time, but one of the most giving people I knew, was an idolater, and how dare he be Catholic, right? I'm thinking, wow, you guys are jerks. But also coming from, my mom, got her degree in microbiology, and I've always been interested in science. If I wasn't doing animation or some kind of art like that, I probably would have actually gone to school for some form of science. I don't know what. So I really like that this, I had no problem. Again, I've read, I was reading tons of Clive Barker and stuff around this time. So I obviously have no problem with who, for a lot of legitimate reasons, when you read his works, has a pretty big bone to pick with religion. I can't blame him given, his upbringing. You can't. It was terrible. So many terrible things that he lived through, but became part of his art and how he expressed himself. I don't think we would have him as the artist and illustrator, playwright, everything novelist without those things. Now, whether or not that's good or bad, considering you don't want, I personally don't want people to have to go through so much pain. But all of that, I found it just fascinating. And again, the movie doesn't really take sides.
Yeah.
Donald Pleasance and Victor Wong's characters kind of meet even more. They kind of put aside their rivalry and go, wow, this is bigger than all of this, and none of what we knew is right. Like, on the one hand, you've got a ton of religious people who have been worshiping an alien, and I had no idea about that. And Donald Pleasance going, I've been duped.
Yeah.
Because they all knew about this book. It's been passed around through ages. This cylinder of anti-God has been here for, centuries, for millennia. And I've been worshiping this way because they've told me that. And he has both science and religion are in a crisis. Together. And that's fascinating. And I really feel like there's so much stuff we don't know about the universe. Like I said, my beliefs are my own. Other than, I just think for the most part, either side should, and I say side, I also don't think you have to take a side on that, but just don't be a dick. Like, there's so much where I see people's hypocrisy, and which is also why I quit going to church. Even when I went to art school and there was a Bible study group. It's like, oh, well, I'm in art school. This is going to be an enlightened, this is going to be different. This is not going to be when I went to youth group at this, Baptist church. Then I went a couple times and realized, oh, this particular group actually not too far off from that. And I quit going because it didn't provide me with what I thought. It felt like more of the same. And there were some really nice people, and that's fine. But that was really my change of, what, I'm cool with believing what I believe, and you should, as long as you're not hurting others or yourself, that's between you and whatever else. But I like, especially on this viewing, how intermingled everything is and all the ideas it throws out. The idea that, this could exist at a subatomic level and all the stuff that's being thrown about. It's pretty fascinating.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you very much. I'm trying to imagine back in the 80s. I remember hearing people talk about, struggling with, whether something were, like, if you were with the real religious people, they would struggle with anything quote unquote secular,
Right.
just.
Well, I mean, again, we talked about it before on the show. Satanic Panic was alive and well.
It was a real thing.
Despite the fact I tried to go to church all the time, and my sin was listening to heavy metal and playing Dungeons and Dragons and liking some video games. I had cousins who had an Atari cartridge that had zodiac symbols on it.
Yeah.
And my aunt and uncle at the time made them take the Atari cartridge out of the driveway and smash it with a hammer because
funny.
Because it introduced evil into their house.
It's so funny because the Zodiac was such a big deal in the 60s and 70s, but setting aside the Zodiac killer. But in fact, I want to ask Drew about this as well. You said this is a Satanic Panic, a movie with some commentary on Satanic Panic. Grady Hendrix made a movie called Satanic Panic, and I don't think Grady Hendrix's movie is awesome, but I don't think it's actually about Satanic Panic. It's just called that. It's and I have yet to see a movie that's really about Satanic Panic. But I want to know why you think this is a good movie to comment on the Satanic Panic.
Well, first of all, I mean, it comes out right in like that sort of late 80s when I feel like, at least for me, that felt like the most prevalent. Like I was hearing the most about like, oh, devil cults, oh, Satanism. Oh, be careful about going trick-or-treating because Satanists are going to put drugs or razor blades into your candy and stuff like that. And I think anything that has that sort of demonology flavor to it fits neatly into that. But what this does, and again, I kind of think about it like, Hellraiser also does that, is that it subverts your expectations of that. There's no pitchforks, there's no cloven hooves, there's no bat wings, there's not even any hellfire. It really subverts your idea of what a demon or the devil should be, and thus forces you to think about that a little more. it makes you think about the idea of evil, and it makes you think of what the symbol of the devil is. And if you strip away all that sort of stained glass window iconography, like the icon of what the devil is in most people's mind, what does that idea mean? And again, other than Hellraiser, I can't think of another movie that does it quite as well as this one, because this one really just goes, oh no, screw all that stuff you think about the devil. Everything you think about the devil is, other than him being evil, is wrong. And this is what the devil actually is. And again, I don't know that it's necessarily about the satanic panic. I just think it wouldn't work as well without it.
All right, I can understand that.
I consider. By the way, go ahead, Gretcher. Sorry.
I consider satanic panic kind of a genre more than anything. Like, I think if you look at like The Exorcist on, like any movie that dabbles in demonology, I call that a satanic panic horror movie.
I'm totally there with you about the whole Catholic fetishization thing, which, by the way, I dig, because I dig exploitation and majorly. That Catholic fetish thing, awesome. Especially the Italian ripoffs of The Exorcist, love that stuff. But I still,
it's funny you had mentioned that, because a lot of and again, because this is the media of the time, and people can be swayed by different things. But as that was spun into the satanic panic as it was in the 80s, there were more than a few people who said, I was Catholic. I found the ritual of Catholicism led me to the ritual of what people were doing in the rituals of the satanic rituals.
Sure.
What were you gonna say, Jason? I really want to know.
So about that it was interesting to see people on the news at the time, or in media, or in and a lot of this is spun by some bad faith argument people who were at the front lines of this. But in the same way, I had a friend who saw a DARE speech and heard about the effects of marijuana and went, that sounds actually pretty cool.
Well, exactly. I mean, in other words,
the Catholicism part of it did, in some ways, weirdly, was a gateway for some people who got interested to this. But also on a side thing, if you want to see a newer satanic panic movie, at Fantastic Fest, there was We Summon the Darkness, which I have mixed feelings about. And it's not, those are my own things. But if you want to see a movie that takes on heavy metal and the era and has a couple of really cool turns, unexpected things, look up We Summon the Darkness.
Okay.
I think that'll give you, I'd like to talk to you at some point about it if you watch it. I have my own stuff, but it has nothing to do with the directors, and the cast and crew were great. They did a great Q&A. But I think there's some really interesting parts. There are some reasons it didn't work as well for me, but that not in a way that makes it a bad film.
Yeah.
But I think it's worth watching. And if you're out there and you're like, hey, I want to see a modern satanic panic movie, I would say We Summon the Darkness deals with a lot of stuff that made it interesting.
I have so many thoughts here. One of them is that obviously there's several, like, if you want to draw a chart, there's several kinds of what I might call a satanic panic movie, because there's the ones that are that follow the line of thinking that was the satanic panic, which is like Mazes and Monsters. And then there's the art that was influencing the straights to be so obsessed with the idea that Satanism was happening, and sometimes exploited all of that. And maybe that's two examples. And so that would be The Exorcist and all the Italian ripoffs, like Lisa and the Devil and so forth. And then and Black Exorcist and whatever. And then there's stuff like this, which is a kind of a challenge, a flip on its head. It's I'm giving you different ideas about Satan. And I hadn't actually thought of this as being a part of that conversation. So I'm totally.
This movie would not exist. This movie would not exist without The Exorcist.
No, I guess that's true.
No way.
I hadn't thought about it. I completely had not thought about that.
In fact,
My
I used to get together with my friends, once or twice a year, and we would marathon this, The Omen, and The Exorcist. That was like a thing that we would do.
yeah, I can dig
So
that.
yeah,
I mean, I kind of, to get back to something interesting that Tony was saying, I love, you're right, the straight up real satanic imagery that sometimes you could get, like basically the more it looks like a seventh grader's book cover, the more awesome it will look. Like if you're gonna do it all the way. Have there be upside down crosses and vats of blood and naked people writhing on top of coffins and everything. Like have rosaries made of weird stuff and incantations that go backwards and strange satanic canticles. Because to really fly, it has to be disturbing and frightening and feel like a reversal of something that you believe in, like a Catholic Mass.
Well,
If you don't believe in the Mass, then all of that symbolism doesn't work. It's not exciting anymore.
Well, that's what people didn't understand. That's what parents always forget.
Yeah.
Is if people want to check out the thing that sounds taboo, especially when you're young and impressionable. If people go, you can't watch that because it's the worst. Like every kid is going to go, it can't be that. Like, I got to see this now.
When in
if
fact,
more parents, I mean, I'm not saying you have to ignore it, but if more parents went, yeah, that's kind of cheesy. I don't even know, like really talked about it. And that's how my parents, like we had discussions, as opposed to that's the worst,
exactly.
Like that's,
I think the thing is about,
and that's what appealed to it though.
Yes.
I think the thing is about this movie, though, is by the time that this one came around and then Hellraiser came around, I think that those tropes that you're talking about have been so well worn that like horror movie filmmakers had to start exploring this from a different point of view. And I'm not saying that all that stuff can't be effective. Like all that stuff is in, again, I love The Omen, I love The Exorcist, I love all the Hammer movies.
I mean, the Hellraiser, the
Catholic
kinky psychosexual bullshit of Hellraiser is fascinating. The whole idea that, oh, wait a minute, instead of doing an upside down cross, let's just have people get off on pain. Whoa, it's amazing.
Well, I think it's, again, it goes back to that idea of stripping away the icon, and I think that as an intellectual exercise, that's what makes this movie work for me. And I get, even though I consider it a relation of The Exorcist and a relation of The Omen, I get things out of it that I don't like. Actually, I would say I get different things out of all three of those movies. Like The Omen, it makes you grapple with the idea of, could you it's basically could you kill Hitler if he was a kid, question, like could you kill Hitler as a baby question. And the Exorcist is just, I mean, it's The Exorcist. I mean, there's nothing I could say, but we did a whole episode on it, and there's literally nothing I could say that hasn't been said about it. But this movie, I think, is wildly unappreciated because of the way it approaches it with this like fresh coat of paint. And so it's the science of evil, and I am endlessly fascinated by that.
Okay, I can dig that. I can. Although I think Julia and I just both had, I think, pacing issues with it. And I don't think we had pacing issues with it together. I think we each had pacing issues with it separately at the same time. I don't know why I said that. I don't know if I'll keep that in there.
You should. I mean,
I'm a proponent of keeping it all in.
Julia, would you like
a jar that spins?
Have we lost Julia? Or is she just
no, I'm here.
No?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's just that I've seen, I don't know, I've already attacked the movie enough. I feel like the ideas that you guys are talking about, I didn't even notice that they were getting into these ideas in this movie because it was so cluttered and busy. I mean, so I've seen so many things, so many films that explore the ideas of religion and science and how those things work together that have really fascinated me. And I've just loved all that stuff. I've loved all the stuff about, evil and Satan. All are great themes, and I did not get anything out of this film on any of those themes. So for me, it just was lost. Like, I think what you guys are talking about, a movie that I didn't see, you know what I mean? Like, all this stuff that you're saying, I'm just like, well, that's all great stuff, but I didn't see any of that in this movie.
Wow.
And so that's what I'm saying is I was so distracted by how many people there were and how many different things were going on and how many bugs there were and how much grossness and just all that I'm just like, well, I didn't even like stop to think about the themes because there was just too much of me just watching the movie through my closed fingers. So I mean, I think I think there's a lot of things where I've watched and I've been like, this is really neat. It's exploring some really interesting themes, and that's just this. I just didn't see it there. So I'm glad you guys did, and I'm glad you guys got something out of it, but it was just not for me.
Rock on. Okay. Well, I think that's super fair. All right. That felt very much like our final thoughts, but we should do our final thoughts anyway to see if there's anything that you would add. I think we started with Drew, and so we should do that again. Monsieur Drew, what an interesting conversation this has turned out to be. Prince of Darkness.
My opinion is unwavered by this discussion. I fucking love Prince of Darkness. I may watch this movie again tomorrow. Like, excellent. I really, really like this movie.
Very good, very good. Julia,
I don't really have anything to add to what I just said.
All right. Yes, no, that was an excellent summary, and I think it was good. Mr. Tony.
Yeah, I don't have much. I don't think I will watch it as much as Drew, but I am glad I saw it again because each time I get a little bit more out of it. And I mean, Carpenter's amazing, so even his worst movies are better than a lot of other movies.
That's true.
And
that's true.
His scores, it just works. And I really do think we should do Mouth of Madness at some point as well.
Yes. I mean, maybe just in a couple of weeks, since we haven't announced what comes after our 300.
You could just knock out the Apocalypse trilogy. Why not?
Yeah,
I mean, apropos for many reasons.
For what's going on.
Yeah. Beware murder hobos and strange. If you find a strange thermos of green spinny goop, especially be careful.
I think that was probably already the case before we saw this film.
It's true. But
unless you want to become a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle.
Exactly.
I mean, or Daredevil. Jeez. He gets whacked in the forehead with one of those things and it makes him a blind superhero. So, yeah.
He's lucky it didn't hit him and then make him spit goo everywhere. That would be totally different.
But hey, you know what? At least your eyesight gets cured and you're able to grow arms back. So that's something.
I mean,
that's true. But not for Matt Murdock. Only in this movie.
No, I'm saying in this movie.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, that's the problem is you don't know if the green goop is going to make you not need glasses anymore or if it's going to make you go blind. That's the problem.
Or make you turn a horrific burn victim / pregnant.
Boy, her skin makeup was amazing. It really did look like blisters. Like
whoever does the next inevitable Nightmare on Elm Street reboot. I know this is not a Nightmare on Elm Street movie, but look at the makeup in this because that's like the best Freddy Krueger makeup that's not a Freddy Krueger makeup.
Oh,
sure.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah. So yes, I've really enjoyed it. By the way, In the Mouth of Madness, the other thing that would be good to talk about is that movie is about a paperback writer. And as a paperback writer, I love seeing movies with paperbacks in them.
Back to the Beatles.
I know that sounds, yes, that's true.
Paperback writer.
Exactly. Or as it would be in this movie.
I love any movie that features people passing around paperbacks written by characters in the movies. That's why I like Basic Instinct. So,
it was all Julia. It was the books. That's why I'm rewatching it.
He also only read Playboy for the articles.
Did Playgirl have articles?
There you go. Playboy. I don't know. I never looked at a Playgirl. I have no idea.
Playboy had excellent.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So we should definitely do our endorsements. This has actually been quite a fun conversation. So, What do you have going on that you want to share with us, Mr. Drew?
The thing that I have really dived deeply into this week, which is it's good because it's free and it's on YouTube, is Dark Corner Reviews. It's a YouTube channel. Particularly, I like what they call their Dark Corner Classics videos, where they do like little like for example, they have excellent 2-part video series where they dissect the Hammer Frankenstein series, and then they do the Hammer Dracula series.
Wow.
And they're well researched, they're wonderful. His regular reviews are funny. He's actually it's funny, I brought up The Devil's Wedding Night, but earlier today I was watching his review of The Devil's Wedding Night. So it was
I'm so glad that you brought up The Devil's Wedding Night, because I swear to God, I love that movie, and
he is less kind to it than we were, but it was still,
I can imagine.
It was still working. He also,
you called it the Dark Corners Film Reviews.
Dark Corner Film Reviews, and it's all horror films. He's a Brit. And actually, we were just all kind of over email. We're debating the Charles Band Corona Zombies movie. He did a review of that, which I thought was, I'll probably still never see that movie, but he did a review of that I thought was really interesting. So it's all horror films, from different, in a lot of ways it's like this podcast, because it's horror films from across different eras, talked about and discussed from a sort of loving fan lens, and there's a lot of sense of humor. The other thing that I've done, anybody who listens to this podcast knows that I am a fan of the Ghostbusters franchise. Well, I was very, very happy to see that Hulu now has Extreme Ghostbusters on their streaming service, which was the 90s, sort of mid to late 90s sequel series to the real Ghostbusters cartoon from the 80s. And it's done by the people that did the Godzilla animated series from that same time period, and the Men in Black animated series. So it's kind of got a similar animation style, and I know some people who don't like it, but I think it's a fun little series, and I much better written than a lot of Saturday morning cartoons are from that time period. And oh, by the way, speaking of that, I am endorsing doing Saturday morning cartoons, because I started watching this yesterday morning on Saturday, and this whole lockdown, Jamie and I have been doing Saturday morning cartoons every Saturday. So you find that if you find that there is an animated show that you want to watch streaming, or even several animated shows, because like we did Extreme Ghostbusters with like Harley Quinn TV show on DC Universe, and a few other things, DuckTales, stuff that was adult, stuff that wasn't adult, mixed together. But like it's a fun way to start your day. So I'm also not only endorsing Extreme Ghostbusters on Hulu, but I am also endorsing the idea of Saturday morning cartoons, because we're all at home. We all have all these streaming services that are filled with cartoons. Bring it back to Saturday. You can do it as an adult, no shame. Final reminder, well, not final reminder, but another week's reminder, the Ringo Awards. Please go to their website. Please nominate me for Best Writer. Please nominate Halloween Man for Best Hero. It is a award for excellency in the comic book industry. I am trying to take some awards home for the 20th anniversary of Halloween Man. I have been posting the links on the Castle of Horror social media and my personal social media as well, for those of you who follow me. Please just take a moment and go vote for me. So those are 3 things. Sorry, that was a mouthful. I know I've talked a lot this episode in general. But yeah, please vote for me in the Ringo Awards.
No, that's fabulous. Great. All right, Julia, do you have anything to endorse?
Well, I hadn't thought of anything, but then when Drew talked about YouTube, my favorite YouTuber, I've mentioned him before, is Ryan George. I just love Ryan George. And so most of what we've seen him do is the pitch meetings, where it's just, he basically pitches movies to a producer who is also played by him, and they're all the movies that exist already. So it's basically just a movie review, but with this little twist. But there's also he's got another series called First Guy Ever, I think it's called. And the first guy ever, yeah. And it's like the first guy ever to take a vacation, the first guy ever to commit a crime. And it's just kind of like bizarre. Like, how would this be the very first time it happened? And they're just hilarious. And I actually fall asleep to them quite a bit because I will just play it on my phone with my earbuds in and let just like a playlist of Ryan George's play because it's so, it's not monotone, but it's just him talking. So there's not a lot of, so I will listen to them and I'll doze off and it's very fun, but he's hilarious and very smart. So that's my endorsement.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Tony, what do you got?
I'm trying to think, since, wait, I'll say something for Thursday, but, or I'll probably reiterate on Thursday. This Friday, May the 1st, Bandcamp's doing their waiving their fees for musicians again. So usually they take a cut when you buy something. So if you need some new music, I recommend going to Bandcamp anyway because it's great for indie musicians. They really have it down. But Friday would be the day to, it doesn't have to be Deserts of Mars or Rise from Fire, although that's really nice. Or I think, does Danger Cakes have stuff on Bandcamp, Drew?
I should know that. I don't.
Well, if they do, then that's also. But there's tons. I mean, labels. I know smaller labels who have their whole catalog on Bandcamp. Anyway, that would be the day. That would be Friday.
So what's happening on Friday again? It's
Bandcamp is. So Bandcamp usually when you sell your album either digitally or sell your merch, they take a cut, and that's their cut for hosting it and providing all these services, and it's a reasonable cut comparatively. But on Friday, the 1st, all of the money goes to the band. They are waiving their fee for that day. So for 24 hours, they don't take a cut of your whatever you're selling, and that's pretty awesome. Because
cool.
We can't tour, we can't play out, we can't sell. I mean, I can sell CDs through them, but a lot of your sales where you get more money are because you sell them at shows. So merch is usually in these days where everything's free and Spotify doesn't pay anything, and Pandora may or may not even put you on their playlist. You try to get as much money as you can through all these side things, and usually merch and sales that's the way to go. So that's really cool. I know there was something else, I'm sure, but there's season 2 of Kingdom, the Korean period zombie show, and it is amazing. I highly recommend it. I watched the first couple of episodes of the new series and new season, and whoa, is it intense.
Where are you watching it, on Netflix?
Yes, it's on Netflix. Really just top notch. The cinematography is great. If you're kind of think you're burnt out on zombies, this is a really cool take on it. I enjoyed the first season, and it took me a while to get it because I was kind of burnt out. Another zombie thing, I don't know. Also on Shudder, if you haven't seen it, One Cut of the Dead. I know a lot of people have been talking about this. Also, before you watch One Cut of the Dead, I have 2 things. Don't listen to anybody. Go into it totally blind. It's better that way. And you might go, hey, I've kind of seen this J-horror thing. This is not really my bag. Stick with it. Trust me. I've known so many people who are like, it wasn't really my bag, and I turned it off X amount of minutes into it. Don't make that mistake. I don't want to spoil anything. Again, no one should spoil One Cut of the Dead, but it's on Shudder. You should check it out. If you don't like it by the end, I don't know. Everybody should like what they like, but it's not what you think it is, and it's really good. So
excellent.
But yeah, that and Kingdom are my main ones. So I'm sure hopefully I'll have more by Thursday when we do a hangout episode.
Sure. And I by the way, I'm really loving the hangout episodes because we're doing such goofball movies for those, and I hope we wind up doing a lot more stuff like The Devil's Wedding Night. Honestly, I think boy, I mean, the sky's the limit, isn't it? I mean, there's just so much stuff that we can do. But I'm excited for this Thursday. It's going to be Dragon Lives Again, which is the craziest Bruce Lee exploitation movie. It features rip-off characters of The Man with No Name, Dracula, and Emmanuel. I didn't even know. It's like they just plugged something into my brain and said, what would be in a good movie? And there it is. Yes, The Man with No Name, Dracula, and Emmanuel against Bruce Lee. I don't know why Emmanuel is fighting Bruce Lee, but there we are. So, okay. My endorsements really quickly. There is another show on Netflix that I thought was wild, and I've seen the first 2 episodes, called oHasmukh. It is a Hindi show about a comedian who, in order to get his mojo and do a good show, he must commit murder. And it's like Dexter if he were a stand-up comic, and it's actually it's funny. It's a comedy, and it's dark and strange and pretty cool. Somebody posted it on LinkedIn, and I tried it, and it was really good. The other thing is Castlebridge Media, who published the Castle of Horror anthology, are publishing on June 2nd a new book that I wrote called The Bookman. It's under a pseudonym, Peyton Douglas. It's not a secret that it's a pseudonym. It's just like, this is Jason writing as Peyton Douglas, so that I have a separate brand from the middle grade stuff.
So it's not going to be a dark half situation where you have to kill your pseudonym eventually.
He didn't guarantee that isn't the case.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you if my brain has not somehow created an entity that will hunt me down. But the book is called The Bookman. It is a surf party meets demons tour de force of pop culture in the late 50s, and I really enjoy it. And so right now it is number 4 in the new releases for teen and young adult ghost stories.
Behind 3 Five Nights at Freddy's books.
That's right, behind 3. God
so in my
damn.
opinion, it's really number 2 after Five Nights. It's just that there's 3 Five Nights at Freddy's books.
Pop culture tour de force, so I'm not.
Yeah.
I don't know what to tell you, but I've got walk-ons from Forrest J. Ackerman in this thing, and Dan Curtis, and Frankie Avalon shows up, and Desi Arnaz, and George Burns, and
you can't say Frankie Avalon without in my head me playing my mom going Frankie Avalon, because she ran into him at the Dallas airport one time and was like freaking out. Anyway, that was kind of funny.
It's Gidget with demons. Anyway, so that's a thing. You can pre-order it now. I hope you do. I hope you take a look at it. I really enjoyed this one, and it's by my weird alter ego, Peyton Douglas. And yeah, that brings us to the end. So thank you everybody for being on. Thank you guys for discussing Prince of Darkness. I actually came out of this learning a lot more, and I appreciate it. I smell brownies in the house, so Julia has made brownies. So what a lovely evening this is. So everyone, and yes, I can't explain that we've taken to cooking so much during the show, but
you still owe me ribs.
Come get them, Drew.
This thing is over, I will make you some ribs. So absolutely. Yeah, right. Yeah, I'll have it down by then. All right. Thank you, everybody. Have an excellent evening, and we will talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Good night.